Excellent. Right. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are or what time it is when you're watching this. Thank you very much for joining us for the Sports Tableau User Group number 2, our second iteration of these new Tableau events that we're hoping to bring together people who are interested in sports and some interested speakers as well who are going to talk about sports and Tableau and a crossover, or maybe one and maybe the other as well. So it should be good fun. Sports Tableau User Group organisers, just for those who didn't attend the first one, or for those going forwards, there are 4 of us who are organising the Sports Tug. Stephen and Ryan, who are based in Canada, Fred, who is based in Australia, and myself, who's actually based in London. And part of our attempt here is that we want this to be a global community, so we are trying to rotate the timings as well for these events. So this one is supposed to be good for people who are in the APAC zone. The first one was good for people who are in Europe, and the next one, which we'll get to kind of a little bit towards the end, is going to be good for people who are based in the Americas. So hopefully there will be some that people can always attend. And what we're trying to do, as I said with this, is just bring together people who are interested in similar things, really. And we want to give them a bit of an insight into what sports analytics is actually like, so that we can hopefully give people like maybe a bit more insight into that world, but also potentially some skills and some inspiration to take away. And particularly if it's something that they're interested in or they're thinking about as a career as well, it might give them a little bit more of an idea and a guide as to what these roles also actually look like, because I know certainly from when I've spoken to people in the community that they are quite desirable roles. So we've got 2 brilliant speakers for us today. Lewis from 2K Games will go up first, and then Penny from the AFL. And I'm very, very excited to see what they say. So I don't know if Fred mentioned this to you guys. He probably didn't, but beforehand, we obviously like to ask people what their favorites are and their favorite athletes. So before you crack on with your slides, Louis, would you mind just telling us a little bit about your favorite sports?
Hi, so thanks Mo for the introduction. So I'm Louis from 2K Games. I'm in Singapore. My favorite sports is probably rowing, I guess, because I used to do like dragon boat and kayaking, which is one of my favorite sports. Water sports in general, I would say. In terms of athlete, I don't think I have a favorite. I did watch the Mike Tyson and Jake Paul fight just the other day, which wasn't fun. It was pretty tame. Yeah, but that's it for me for sports.
Excellent. Yeah, I didn't watch that fight. I was hoping that the result would go in one direction and it went in the other direction. But I suppose that's not really surprising. But what's dragon boat racing like?
So dragon boat is a kind of like a boat of a team of maybe 10 to 14 folks. So you have like 6 on each side, and it's basically a race. Yeah, a boat race where it's a very highly coordinated race where everyone has to row in one direction, and in one flow. So every year, I would say probably like 3 or 4 races, big races every year, and it sort of started off from Mid-Autumn Festival, one of the kind of cultural festivals in Chinese culture, where they celebrate the mooncake, where they have mooncakes and gifts for relatives and all that kind of thing. So it's pretty interesting. Yeah.
Sounds great. And always nice to learn a bit more about a new sport that I've not encountered as well. Great stuff. Cool. Thank you very much. Right. I believe I'm now hopefully going to hand over to you with some slides. And then you can take it away.
Alrighty. Let me just share my screen. Whoops. There we go. Okay, hopefully everyone can see my screen all right.
I certainly can.
All right, cool. So hi everyone. This is my segment on staying ahead of the game. So as Mo said, I am from 2K Games. So it's not exactly sports related. I'm from the video games industry, but I'm here to share a little bit on how we do analytics in kind of sports related game. So I do have like a one slider if you're interested to connect with me. I'm a 2 times Tableau public ambassador. I co-lead the Singapore Tableau user group, as well as the committee project Games Like This. So if you have been around the Tableau public space, you've probably seen some of the projects we've done. Early this year, I started kind of like a YouTube channel to kind of chat with authors on how they actually create some of the amazing biz. So it's called Secrets of the Biz. And if you're interested, you can check it out as well. I think to date, I have probably about like 30 episodes of 10 minutes each. So it's really short clip for you to kind of dive into what the author's thought processes and design inspirations are. Fun fact, this is probably you're gonna hear first from me here, but I'm gonna have a Christmas special called Secrets of the Iron Fist, where I will dive into all the amazing Iron Fist entries this year. There are about 191. Unfortunately, I can't sit down with all 191 of them, so I picked about like 10 to 20 of them to kind of understand their design processes. So it'll be a really interesting one. I'm probably going to be dropping an episode once daily, in starting December. So keep a lookout on that. So this brings us to our main topic. So hopefully you guys play video games, because if not, this would not resonate with you. But having said that, I think a lot of the folks worldwide play video games, because when I was doing my this entry, I think 1 out of 3 people in the world actually plays video games. And this is a chart actually from I think it was Guide Strats, and basically visualize the top rated video games from every country. So you can see that almost every country has created a video game of some sort. You know, you probably have more resonance with popular video games like these characters. I'm sure many folks of you would know who Mario is, who Sonic is, who Pac-Man is. Probably not all of them, but at least a handful of them. And this is basically from the British Film and Television Arts Awards, where they kind of rated the top 20 most iconic video game characters. So chances are you've probably seen some of them. So this brings me to my topic today. I think early in October, Games Like This actually released a starter kit, somewhat similar to Data Plus TV or Data Plus movies, where we have a dashboard of 14,000 unique games released from 1980s to 2024. And as I was kind of putting that data set together, I also realized that sports-related games are on the rise. And from 1984 till January 23, there's actually 1,600 sports-related game. And what I mean by sports-related games are things like simulation of sports. So you have like the FIFA games, you have the NBA games, you have NFL, and so on and so forth. So if you are interested to explore more, you can download the Games Like This starter dashboard over at my Tableau public profile, or you can also tune in into Thursday's Analytics Talk, where I will talk a lot about how we actually created this data set and kind of like the analytic journey that we had. So when we talk about sports simulation game, why do people play this kind of games? Obviously, the very first thought is that it's fun. And some people want to play as their favorite athletes, because obviously you can't be David Beckham in real life. So, the best you could kind of feel like David Beckham is playing FIFA as David Beckham. Some folks can't play in real life. They could have inaccessibility issue, probably like where they stay doesn't have like a basketball court or soccer field, or they could have suffered from an injury that don't allow them to play certain sports. So these are some of the kind of reasons why people play sports simulation games, right? Over the left, you can see like all the different types of example. This is not an exhaustive list, but you can see like NBA, football, you have racing games as well. So sports simulation game is quite a big genre, I would say. So in terms of the gaming industry, how do we use analytics to kind of go around this, right? How do we apply analytics on that? And the first step, I kind of want to bring you through like the whole process of getting a product or a game created to shipping it to the customer. So the very first step is actually starting from the developer himself, right? It could be an individual or it could be a whole entire studio team, right? And they deal with everything to do with audio, code to visuals of the game. And then the next part is where some developers do find a publisher, or if the developer is big enough, or the studio is big enough, they don't really need a publisher separately. But more often than so, a lot of developers to get like a publisher to help them to reach out to different kind of distribution channels that they might not have access to by their own. Right. So the publisher's role is to they're dedicated to the marketing of the product and making sure that the product gets to where the user are, right? And this is via through like kind of storefronts. So it could be your typical brick and mortar physical stores, or it could be like digital distribution. So like things like Steam, things like Epic Games, as well as like PlayStation Store or Xbox stores. And last but not least, it will be the customer, which is all of us, right? So for box games, which is games that you kind of sell and there's no recurring spending on the game, this is where the cycle usually ends, right? And in terms of how analytics is being applied, you can think of this when we think about developers, they use analytics to optimize their code. So things like analyzing how fast the telemetry or how fast the code runs to get a certain animation to show up in the game, and they kind of optimize maybe reducing the number of sizes of the image and so on and so forth. They also do some form of market research where they want to understand what's the addressable market to the genre that they're going after. So, for example, for sports, they want to know like how many people play, NBA, or how many people play soccer in the region. All right, and they usually do this on a global basis, so they can kind of understand where the bulk of the users are. And lastly, cost management. So when we talk about cost management, it's mostly around whether they want to have in-house production or versus, they have external consultants or kind of like term-based resources, right? Because coding, visuals, audio, all these are really expensive, as well as localization, right? So they might not have all the human resource within the studio themselves, which is why they probably need to look outside. And this is actually where publisher can come in to help, because they do with a publisher, they can kind of offset some of this cost to the publisher themselves. So the publisher can take charge of market research. They can do user group focus user groups to kind of understand what are people's wants and desires in a game. They can do things like A/B testing, where you kind of churn out two different visuals and see which one actually garners more response from your users. You can also use the publisher to do share of voice, mind, and market, which is basically measuring how much of a impact that or how much of a brand awareness that it is within the market. So things like Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, how many of the consumers actually talk about your brand or your product. The next one is actually the storefront. So storefront is pretty straightforward. So they talk about analyzing distribution costs. What is the margin that you want to get? Inventory management. Which are the stores that are really moving goods fast? You want to kind of cater more physical goods to them. For digital transaction or digital channels, it's a bit more straightforward. And usually what happens is that the partnership team in publishing department would kind of clinch exclusivity deals or marketing grants. Let's say, I mean, over the past couple of years, there are some examples of the video games company going into exclusive rights with Xbox or PlayStation, saying that we'll give you the game on your platform for a year, but we get like maybe 500,000 to $1 million from you just to service the marketing and stuff like that. And in the meantime, within this 1 year, we're not sell the rights to other platforms like Xbox or PC and so on and so forth. So these are kind of some of the deals that people do. And then lastly, for customer, like for us, we also do analytics on our own. We analyze whether the game is of value to us, whether we buy the game on discount, or we buy the game at launch, or whether we pre-purchase it for early bird bonuses and stuff like that. So there are a lot of things that happens. And in terms of industry standards, this again is not an exhaustive list, but you have very standard terminologies that people use in the gaming industry. So things like your unique installs, which is track the first time that the user installs and successfully logs into the game. You have your daily or monthly active users, you have your playtime sessions, the retention, churn, returning new users, and so on and so forth. And all of this is used usually to build dashboards like this. So this is, from my company, but these are just mock-up, so there's no real data in there. So it's fine to share. But these are just two examples of how we use analytics in our day-to-day when we're managing our video games, right? So over the left, you can see kind of like a sales summary page where your business users can actually dive into where the revenue is coming from, which platforms they're coming in from which region, and so on and so forth. And kind of like the funnel, like the gross revenue to the sell-in, which is where we sell to the retailers, and the sell-through, which is defined as when we sell to the consumers themselves, right? And then over at the right, you have more of a kind of business tracking dashboard where you track the engagement of the users, you track installs, you track revenue, right, across like regions and platforms as well. So this is just one facet of video games analytics, and this is for just box game, right? There's another bigger spectrum which deals with live ops games. So live ops meaning live operation. So games that are launched, it could be free to play games, or it could be a minimal amount that you pay, like $20 or $30 just to get the game. And every now and then there is in-game currency within the game itself that you can purchase to buy more items, to buy more kind of enhancements to your characters in the game itself. And this is what we mean by live operated games, right? So for live operated games, you would see that there's an additional step where we share between the developer and the customer. And this kind of like a loop that goes on and on as long as the game is live, right? And what happens within this two spectrum is that we do a lot more things like customer segmentation, we do behavioral analysis, we do fraud detection, we do game balancing. And even from the customer point of view, we track their engagement and like what are the game hooks that keep you on the game itself, right? And if you think about this in another spectrum, this is a very, very simplified version of how we track player behavior. So it could be simple as, a player logs into the game, selects a certain sub mode, or they purchase an item, or they purchase currency, they play a game, they abandon a game, or they get disconnected with the game. So all of these different triggers are being sent back to the developers, where it kind of sits in either Amazon or a S3 bucket or Snowflake database, right? And we use all of that information to analyze how we can actually keep the player playing longer and spending more, right? And with that, we come into this is another example of dashboards that we use for live operated games. So you can see that these are a bit more intricate as compared to your usual business dashboards. And these are just two of the games. This is actually from one of the games that I used to do called Marvel Midnight Suns. And within that game, there is kind of different heroes that you can recruit to your party. And depending on that, we actually track how many players are using those heroes in the different days and so on and so forth, and what are the different combinations and the game engagement that they do, right? So this is kind of a very simple example, right? And all in all, when we are thinking of all of this, I can think of just 4 steps to summarize how we do analytics in live operated games. And this boils down to 4 parts, right? The 4 framework on how we make users play more and spend more. So we go from acquisition to activation to retention and monetization. So when we talk about acquisition, right? Acquisition is all about getting the users, right? Where the users come from, what channels do the users come from, right? And this is usually done through marketing. So maybe we put out an ad somewhere on Facebook or Instagram or Twitch or whatnot. Um, and what we usually do is we measure the number of impressions or views to a website, and we kind of divide that by the cost, and we have different variation of the cost. It could be cost per click, so we're tracking the amount, the average amount we spend for getting a player to click at, just the register button, or it could be a specific action, or it could be just views themselves. So this is actually for us to analyze, what medium gives us the most bang for buck and how we can optimize spend. Maybe we just want to get the name out there and we don't really care about whether people actually click on register or wish list or whatnot. And that's where we place more importance on cost per impression, right? Um, the other the other step is where analytics is being used is for A/B testing, right? So A/B testing is kind of like a scientific way or systematic way to test reception for different types of messages. So it could be having 2 game posters, and you roll out to very specific control group and test groups of users, and you just want to find out what messaging or what style of visual appeal more with others, with your general audience, right? It could be option A, it could be option B, and with this information we can go back and kind of refine our future marketing messages or visuals. And then the last part of acquisition is about screenflow analysis. And screenflow analysis is just useful, especially when we do kind of website or mini site tracking. We just want to make sure whether there's any gaps or drop off for users along that journey. So it could be, log into our mini site, subscribe to our newsletter, add the game to your cart, check out, and so on and so forth. And this allows us to analyze where are the huge drop-off points and where are people actually clicking through or getting more information from. And all this information is then again put through a reiterative process to help us to optimize the page, or if there's, the button might be too small for people to notice, we might make it bigger and so on and so forth. And then the second step for the framework is activation. Right. So activation is all about how many users actually go past the acquisition stage. We already got their intention to purchase. We already got their attention. How do we get them to install the game, buy the game, and play the game? Right. And this is where we track our kind of, I would say, first level of game telemetry. So things like earlier on when I talked about installs, daily active users, could be concurrent count of users, which is usually used by server administrators to test whether our servers are stable enough to hold a certain number of players on concurrently. Right. And we usually analyze this by geolocation or system. It could be like, more players are on PlayStation versus Xbox. Maybe we want to shift some of the server resources to PlayStation instead of Xbox, and so on and so forth. And then the next one is actually talking about, what is the tutorial process that the user go through. Like, do they finish the entire tutorial process before they start the game? Do they jump straight into the game? Do they, skip all the help messages and so on and so forth? And this helps us to kind of really deep dive into how the player journey, especially the first time experience is. And lastly, for this one, is about monitoring where the choke points, where we see drop-offs of the users are. So, for example, one example I can think of is back when we had this game called Borderlands. It's a first-person shooter game, and what we realized was that players were dropping off at a certain level boss, which was probably giving them a lot more like people can't progress past the boss because of, by the time they reach the boss, they are not strong enough to defeat the boss, or they're not skilled enough. So we use that information to kind of uh, balance the game a little bit, making it slightly easier so people can actually move past it. So analytics actually helps us to understand where all these different drop-off points are, and we can kind of optimize it so we can prevent less of that drop-off and just keep the momentum going on. And then the third step of the framework is about retention. So now we've gotten the players into the game. How do we retain the attention for a longer span, right? And this is where we kind of do cohort analysis, right? We track people that, let's say, install on the first day. Do they return on the second day? Do they return on the third day, fourth day, and so on and so forth? And we kind of break out users into like different segments just to understand their different behaviors, right? And this is probably the most, I would say, most taxing and intricate part of the entire framework, because there are so many ways to go about it, right? And this is just one example from Newzoo, which is a market research company for games, video games. And what they have is persona. And persona is actually built on your behavior in the game, right? It could be, if we are talking about NBA. It could be players, this particular subset of players who just enjoy playing with their games on the couch. They don't play much of the online mode. There could be some that play a lot of the story mode, but don't really play online mode. So there are different triggers like that, or different behaviors that we can use to segment the users into meaningful cohorts. And each of these cohorts, we can use a different approach to get them to retain in the game, right? And we can track, how long do they play, what are the factors that are causing them to churn out of the game, right? So that is the biggest portion of it. And once we kind of get that in line, the next step of the framework actually pretty much falls into place, because when players are happy with the game, they spend more, right? And this is where we talk about monetization, right? In live ops game, there are a couple of different ways that we monetize, right? It could be a free-to-play model where we have kind of in-game advertisement. It could be, we allow them to buy in-game currency, which in turn they can buy things like cosmetic items for their characters, or it could be just a boost to the game itself. There's also a recent trend on kind of premium paid mode, which is kind of like your, I would say, season pass kind of thing, where, for this period of time, if you purchase this, you get access to a certain game mode or certain features for this month itself. And if there are some people who play Diablo, recently they had like the battle pass, where every month they have like a different feature, and you gotta pay for that premium pass. And this is how we actually monetize in the video games industry, right? And with that, we can actually understand what they spend on. Do they buy the item X or item A, B, C? What are the items that they buy together? And this allows us to do even more analysis, like market basket analysis, right? If player A buys this, how much of a tendency would they have in buying another item, and so on and so forth. So this is a very kind of quick snapshot on how we actually do analytics in video games, particularly in the sports simulation. And this is how we actually stay ahead of the players itself, because the more we know about the players, the more we can anticipate when they're going to drop off, or what are the triggers that keep them happy within the game, right? And ultimately, if you think about this, it boils down to just one point, which is this GIF basically just sums it all. And we are always learning from the users, and there's no kind of a stop to this, because the more we learn, the more we can better prepare and better craft future content for our users as well. So with that, I have come to the end of my presentation, and hopefully this is useful for you guys, and a very interesting way of looking at analytics through like a video games lens. So yeah, if anyone has any questions.
That was great. Thanks very much, Lewis. I've got a couple of questions if nobody else has. So I'll kick off with those, and then if any appear in the chat, we can pick them up. I would have thought that because games are kind of already in the digital environment, that people who worked at games companies would be more comfortable with kind of dashboards and thinking about data. But is that actually true?
Not really, because with every company, you have different audience of your dashboard. So you have people from sales, you have people from marketing, people from the games, the data scientists. So obviously, the data scientists wouldn't have any trouble reading your dashboards and whatnot, and they'll probably not use your dashboard that much. They'll probably like do a query into the database and stuff like that. But it's often that we need to think about the sales and the marketing folks, because we want to have kind of dashboard that are actionable for them, that is easy to read, especially for marketing when they look at a funnel of how much users they are bringing in, how much users convert, click through, and so on and so forth. They must be able to quickly dive into what works and what doesn't, so that they can kind of optimize. Maybe I'll drop off this ad because this ad is not moving any players, or maybe you want to kind of tweak the visuals because visual A performs better than visual B, and so on and so forth.
Cool. Thank you very much. And then I suppose, so I used to play a bit of esports when I was much younger and had a full head of hair, and very much enjoyed it. Actually, I thought it was quite good. Obviously, there's been a little bit less conversation recently, but in the past, there's been a lot of conversation around whether esports might have a place at the Olympics or in more traditional kind of sporting competitions. Do you have any thoughts about that?
So I think they did actually get into Olympics, or like a very small segment in the upcoming Olympics. And it's interesting. There's a huge debate about whether they are supposed to be in Olympics, but I'll not go into that. But the bottom line is esports players do also go through very rigorous training programs. I know like some of the top esports team, they don't get to go home, so they kind of settle into like kind of like a summer camp in some mansion or what, where they have dedicated nutritionists, fitness instructors, and trainers to kind of get them to play the game day in and day out, and they manage their health from there. And they are usually locked out for like I don't know, like a couple of months before the tournament starts.
Wow.
And yeah, just like normal athletes, they spend a lot of hours honing their craft. So you could argue, I mean, it's not physical per se, but it takes a lot of mental toll as well. So it's kind of like if you think of chess and any of the games that really use a lot of the brain power.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I like that comparison. And actually, me and my colleagues working in elite sport once tried to come up with a definition of what a sport is that also includes all of the Paralympic sports, because you'd be amazed how many people, their natural definition of a sport is around like physical ability or endurance and things like that. And those have a very different dimension in Paralympic sport compared to able-bodied. And we couldn't satisfyingly come up with one that kind of felt like it did include things that are currently sports and people accept as sports, but didn't include chess, video games, kind of card games and things like that. So it's quite fun. I say fun. It's quite a fun thought experiment if you're that way inclined and you've got 10 minutes before you're going to go to
bed. Definitely.
Brilliant. Great. Well, thanks very much again, Lewis. That was a really interesting look behind the curtain, and I'd never really thought about what the analytics process looked like, particularly for live ops games. So yeah, it's really, really interesting to see actually how much data is embedded throughout and how that analytics process closes as well at the end.
And they don't joke around about saying, it really takes a village to build an entire game.
Yeah, I can see that now. Like it's it looks like a lot of work and a lot of constant communication between some people who probably got some quite different ambitions.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. I'm just going to flash my screen up again. Penny, obviously you've had a quick glimpse into what's coming in terms of the introduction slide, so I'll hand over to that in a sec. But because we are unable to record your slides, I'm just going to skip forwards to this one to say if anyone is interested in speaking at a future Sports Tug event, we have a speaker interest form. There is the QR code. You won't be able to click the hyperlink, I don't think, because it is recording, although that would be very cool if you could. And to say as well, for those who will be ending a recording with us shortly, thank you very much for watching this far, and stay tuned for our next event, which we are planning for February. So before I cut it off, I will just let Penny do her introduction, and then we'll stop the recording there. Thank you, Penny.
Okay, cool, thank you. And yeah, sorry, we're not going to be able to record. We can probably do my first slide or two, but the dashboards, unfortunately, we won't be able to share.
Cool, thank you. Just say when and I'll turn it off.
But yes, my introduction. So I'm based in Melbourne. I put for my favorite sport, I put extreme ironing. If you cannot tell from my background, I'm not a sporty person. I'm actually more of a crafty person, and that was the closest craft related sport that I could find. Can't say that I've ever actually followed it, but maybe it's just the ironing without the extreme part for me. It does exist though. It is a real actual sport. People go and iron on mountaintops and things like that, and they have to iron a shirt or whatever.
Wow. Do they get graded on how well they iron or the extremeness of where they're ironing? Do you know?
I think it's based on on both, but the extremeness is definitely a factor. If you Google extreme ironing, you'll see pictures of people on like the Matterhorn with an iron and an ironing board and stuff, which is quite fun.
Oh, I was just gonna say, because I just Googled it and it's really interesting.
Yeah. So I had heard of it before, and then when I was doing this slide, I was like, obscure sports, because I'm actually not a sports person, and then I was like, oh yeah, it has to be extreme ironing. So yeah. And favorite athlete is Eddie Betts. Again, I'm not a huge sports person, but he is an Aussie rules footballer. Before I started working at the AFL, my then husband was a football fan. He's from South Australia, where it's a lot more prominent. And Eddie Betts played for the Adelaide Crows at that time, which was my ex-husband's team. And he was just a pleasure to watch. You should look him up on YouTube. He's retired now. But I got to meet him this year through work. He was actually using one of my dashboards, which I will mention in the slides, which was incredible. And so I got to meet him, and I got to tell him that I thought he was like really awesome, which was a bit fun. So yeah, so that was quite fun. But yeah, he was really well known for taking goals from a really hard position on the field. So yeah, lots of fun to watch Eddie Betts.
Excellent. Cool.
Cool. Well, I can share mine now. I always like to share the entire screen, so it's going to go a bit funky for a sec, but I get lost if I don't share the whole thing. All right, so that's all showing for everyone.
I can certainly see it.
Yeah, excellent. All right. Well, I'll do the bit of the intro, and then when we get to the dashboards, we'll stop the recording. So sorry for anyone who is watching this back. I forgot to update the title slide. So it's not Elisa Kosh or Isabel speaking. It's myself, Penny Privett, and I am the data visualization lead at the AFL. And so our team has existed for about 5 years now at the AFL. So I'll talk a bit about how we came to be and who's in our team and how we work with the whole industry. So before I get onto that, our vision for the AFL is for everyone to love and connect with Australia's game. Our new CEO, Andrew Dillon, started at the end of last year, and, you know, as happens with companies, whenever there's a new boss in town, we get a bit of a shake-up with things, and this was our new vision that he brought to us. And it's something, I'm not a big fan of visions and that kind of fluffy stuff. It's not my thing. I'm a numbers person, but I really like this one, and I like that it's more than just about being number one, it's more than just about the numbers. It's about that real community feel, which I think is quite special and unique to our sport. So we want people to connect with the game in whatever way, whatever format is going to work for them and their lifestyle and all of those things. So our role in the data and analytics team is to, you know, help underpin every aspect of the business that then goes out to help everyone connect. So we have a team. This is slightly out of date. We've got one more person in our team now. So we're currently a team of 14, but we are shrinking towards the end of the year. We have a few people moving on. So you can see here that our purpose is to empower the AFL industry with expert data and insights to deliver growth and deeper connection with our fans. So Elisa Koch is our leader. Any of you who sort of follow any data stuff out of Australia have probably seen or heard of her. She talks at a lot of events. She's very sharing of our knowledge, and this is a pack or a version of that we go through quite often. So she's the leader of our team, and she started in late 2019 when the data team was founded. And originally it was just myself, Natalie, who's still in the team, Elisa, and I think 3 other people who have since moved on. Whereas now we've grown to this team, we have a full data engineering team. We have myself as data visualization lead. Isabel's our first ever data scientist, and then we have our analytics team, including Nina Morrison, who is also a professional footballer. She plays for the Geelong Cats, and she just got named their best and fairest this year, which is amazing. So we've got, you know, in some ways it's quite a big team, or for me it feels like quite a big team compared to where we started. But compared to a lot of other industries, we are quite a small team, and we are supporting not just the AFL as a business, but we also provide support to all 18 clubs in the league. So essentially we're servicing 19 businesses with just our team. So we are an enabler. I always struggle with that one. An enabler for the AFL industry. So we, as I've just said, we work across both all of our internal departments as well as all 18 clubs. And I'll talk about that structure in a sec. And you can see here that this is just a, you know, visual on where our users are. So we have just over 800 users on Tableau currently, and it's growing every day. I'm getting requests literally daily for people to add new users. And you'll see here that Footy Ops is actually not the biggest department. So whenever I talk to people and I tell them that I work for the AFL and I work in data viz, they always assume that I'm actually working with football data all the time. And yes, we do work with a bit of football data, but that only makes up a small portion of what we do. Our largest customer, if you want to call it that, is our game development department, which is the team that oversees grassroots football. So from your Auskick through to Super Kick and community football leagues all across the country. They are, yeah, as you can see, our biggest users, but also rely on our data quite heavily. You can also see here that the clubs have varying levels of licenses. It's starting to become a bit more even now across all 18 clubs. And we work with them. As I said, I'll go through the specifics in a sec, but essentially we help host the platform, and then we give them access, and we provide levels of support based on what their needs are. Some clubs have more human resources in terms of analysts and people who can go and perform the roles that they need to build dashboards and analyze their data. And they kind of just do it all themselves. They're self-sufficient. And then other clubs are still on at the beginning, or, you know, in the early stages of their data journey, and we'll provide a bit more support. So I'll talk you through how we do that. But we could maybe cut the recording here just so I don't accidentally go too far.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks very much for that. Thanks everyone who's been watching this back, and hopefully we'll see you at the next one.